Happy. Okay. Hello, Dr. Ramsamy. Nice seeing you. Okay. 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 Looking forward to meeting you directly. Okay. Fine. I'm ready, Ramsamy.
Okay, sir.
Ready and no problem. I'm online. Okay.
We are also ready.
Yeah, we are online. No problem.
We can start.
Okay.
Good morning, sir. A cordial welcome to one and all for this program. The influence of a good teacher can never be erased. We are here for one such auspicious day to get influenced by one of our leading doctor in our town. It is an essential aspect of expressing heartfelt greetings to all the people who have joined and become a part of this webinar. This is being hosted by Department of General Medicine. First of all, it is a moment of extreme pleasure for myself and my Department of Medicine to welcome our guest speaker, Professor Dr. Jones Ronald, BSc MD-DM Nephrology, for gladly accepting our invitation and for joining with us. He doesn't need a formal introduction, as he is a very well known for his untiring work and compassionate service in our field. The schedule of this webinar will focus on the topic toxic nephropathy. I wish and hope that our guest speaker will surely enlighten us all and make us all clear of all the challenges regarding this topic. On behalf of one and all gathered here, I welcome you, sir. I bid a very warm welcome to our Dean, Professor Dr. P. Shanmugan, sir, Medical Superintendent, Professor Dr. N. Mohan, sir, Deputy Medical Superintendent, Professor Dr. Prasanna Babu, sir. They equipped with us with the power of knowledge and propel us with the endless support to become better day by day. I welcome you all, sir. Everyone in my department has an equal hand behind the organization of this webinar. So I am glad to express my greetings to our HOD, Professor Dr. Ramasamy, sir, and my fellow colleagues of my department. I am extremely fortunate to welcome HODs of other departments, teaching and non-teaching faculties of all other departments, junior residents, CRRI. I ensure you all that this webinar will be profitable and the next for few hours will be very much informative for every one of us. With these words, I call upon our Dean, Professor Dr. P. Shanmugan, sir, to felicitate the gathering.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, madam. Good morning to one and all. Dear Medical Superintendent Morgan, Deputy Medical Superintendent Prasanna, the Professor and HOD of General Medicine, Dr. Ramasamy, and the faculties of Medicine Department, and the delegates who are registered for this wonderful, I can say, Professor Jones is not only a teacher, and he is a good friend of our family, and a very good teacher, well known to throughout India. So his speech and everything, very popular teacher. No need, as he said, no need to introduce our speaker. So I thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation to give a webinar on toxic nephropathy. We are very eagerly waiting to hear you some good news, some jokes, the other things, all those things. The style of taking classes, attracting the students and everyone, and they spellbound to your lecture. So everyone will be concentrating on your lecture. We are eagerly waiting for it. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and taking part in this webinar. I congratulate the Department of General Medicine to choose such a wonderful teacher and a dedicated nephrologist from Salem. And I thank you and all. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I call upon our Medical Superintendent, Professor Dr. N. Mohan, sir, to address some few words.
Very good morning to one and all. Sir, we are on behalf of our Honorable Chairman and Dean and all our medicine department, we are wholeheartedly welcome you, sir. You are the first Dean of Annapurna Medical College, sir. You are in earlier. It is your institution, sir. So it's we are very much pleased for your the toxic nephropathy topic, sir. So you are not only you are the first nephrologist in Salem DH and in Salem, sir. You are a great teacher and academician. Everyone knows, sir. So with these few words, I wish this webinar CME program a good success, and it will be useful for our students and also for the PGs and also for practicing nephrologists in Salem. I thank Dr. Ramasamy, Professor in the HOD, and his team for organizing this wonderful seminar with the great teacher of Dr. Professor Jones. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. And also, I congratulate the madam for attending this. Madam, இருக்கீங்களா மேடம்? Thank you, madam. உங்களை பார்த்தது ரொம்ப சந்தோஷம். Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. நீங்க ரொம்ப நாள் நல்லா இருக்கணும் சார். ரெண்டு பேரும் 100 ஆண்டுகள் இருந்து சேலத்துக்கு சேவை செய்யணும் சார்.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye to Usha.
Thank you.
Babu.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I call up,
Behind the mask.
thank you. Thank you, sir. I call upon our Vice President, Dr. B. Usha Madam, to enlighten us.
Good morning to one and all present here, and a warm welcome to Dr. Jones, who is my well-wisher, and as Professor Dr. Mohan told, the first Dean of Annapurna Medical College and Hospitals. I welcome you, sir. As all of us know, you are a very good teacher and very good orator. So we are eager to hear your topic on toxic nephropathy. And I congratulate the Department of Medicine for organizing this event with one of the best teachers available in nephrology in Salem. And madam,
Yes,
how are you, madam?
நல்லா இருக்கேன் நல்லா இருக்கேன்
Bye.
Last 2 days I'm okay.
Okay. Okay, sir. So thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity given, and I wish all the best for the Department of General Medicine for the success of this webinar. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. I am pleased to invite our HOD Department of Medicine, Professor Dr. Ramasamy sir, to greet and address our guest speaker.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, madam. I'm very much thankful to every one of in our institution. I welcome our dean, welcome our medical superintendent and vice principal and deputy medical superintendent for this webinar. I am happy to introduce my teacher and as well as my guide and philosopher, Professor John Ronald. He passed out in 1968-74 at Tirunelveli Medical College, and 1976-78 completed his post-graduation at Madurai Medical College, and he acquired his another feather in his crown 1981 National Board of Examination, and he is one of the best student of Professor Amaresan. He completed his BM Nephro 1986 at Madras Medical College, and he published more than several papers international journal, in the national journals, as well as recently in the New England Journal he published dialysis in poisoning. So moreover, and novel biomarkers in acute kidney injury. His area of interest is toxic nephropathy, especially the acute kidney injury, as well as the toxic in acute kidney injury and diabetic nephropathy. And he is awarded and oration awards, Professor Amaresan Award and Gold Medal Award 2013, as well as PG Oration Award 1 hour as a golden hour in acute medical emergencies, that is the 2006, and KG Hospital Oration Award for DM nephropathy, diabetic nephropathy in 2013. So welcome, sir. We are eagerly waiting for your again your lecture, sir, and your advice. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we'll start the session, sir.
Thank you for the nice introduction and welcome by all my friends and the people of the Home of Affairs at Annapurna. Nice seeing you.
So we'll start the session, sir.
Yeah, I can start the session?
Yes, sir. we can.
Yeah, okay. Nice to greet you again, Dr. Shanmugam, Dr. Mohan, Dr. Ramasamy, Dr. Usha, Dr. Prasanna Babu. We're all colleagues. Really so nice. I thank you all, people at the helm of affairs at Annapurna Medical College, to think of seeing me, to find activity in spite of our inactivity at home. There is really academic activities there. So I must thank Dr. Ramasamy particularly pulling me into the webinar. Says, sir, you should talk about the toxic nephropathy. Thank you, Ramasamy, all the department medicine people. Really very happy to see you all. Go in Zoom. Soon we will see in person by God's grace. Take care. So without much wasting much time, I'll go ahead with my lecture. I'm just sharing the screen. Yeah, is it visible? Screen is okay?
No, sir, it's not come.
Okay, fine. So the topic is, this is just a slide, toxic nephropathy. On behalf of the WIMS Hospital and the Parent Association, the Vinayaka Deemed University, I greet you all. When we say about toxic nephropathy, slide?
Screen sharing பண்ணுங்க.
Please.
Okay, one second.
நீங்க முன்ன பண்ணீங்க.
Yeah, okay. The slide share. Okay, just tell me when the slide is there.
நீங்க screen share பண்ணுங்க சார்.
One second.
Screen.
Share.
அதிலே click பண்ணு.
One second. Is it now? It's okay?
Slide வரல சார்.
Slide வரல.
போடுங்க சார்.
Earlier. Okay. I'm again now. Just see now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
இது பண்ணிடுங்க சார். Screen.
என்ன camera?
Show.
Slide show.
Show போடுங்க.
Slide show போட்டேன்.
Yes, yes, sir.
Now.
Okay. Flower one.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Now it's okay. So. So is it okay? Fine. Audio, video, everything is okay?
Both are okay.
Okay. So this is again greet you all from behalf of WIMS. We are all part of the parent university. The topic of toxic nephropathy is very, very important now because we use several drugs, several infections, several problems, several diseases due to the pandemic. We are using several drugs. So ideal that you should know what are the various drugs or the toxins, external or internal, that can cause kidney damage. Why the kidney is very susceptible? We don't talk too much about toxic cardiopathy or a toxic hepatopathy or toxic encephalopathy too much. But most of the time the drug and the external toxins cause damage to the kidney because the kidney is a small filtering organ with millions of nephrons. All the entire blood has to go there. The drug passes through a very concentrated coils of blood vessels in around the tubules, hyperconcentration, medullary hyperconcentration, and the entire substance has to go out through the kidney. So because of the vascularity, because of the workload, there is a decreased incompatibility in the blood supply available to the kidney function. And because this is a factory which has to excrete so many waste products, all the drug breakdown products go through it, it becomes very vulnerable for an injury. Perhaps it's an acute or a subacute or a long term, we call it as chronic. The spectrum, as I already told you, is acute renal failure can happen, it's a chronic kidney disease can happen over months, or a tubular diseases can happen. Sometimes even a nephrotic syndrome can happen due to toxins, drugs. We'll try to be quick as possible and briefly so that I give you an outline so that it will be useful. All the students and the postgraduates also have a glimpse of what lies ahead in their medical practice. There are many types of toxic nephropathy, but the most important thing we are worried about now is acute kidney injury. Previously, we were telling it about acute renal failure. Now it's say ATN, acute tubular necrosis or acute kidney injury, because the injury itself is very, very dangerous. Second part of the type of acute kidney injury is acute interstitial nephritis. That can happen due to some drugs. Sometimes the tubules can get obstructed by some crystals, some drugs. That can cause renal failure. Sometimes some drugs can cause vasoconstriction and they can block the arterial vessels, vasoconstriction. You can see the vessels, the tubules and the vessels, everything can be affected. So the spectrum of causing acute kidney injury is also multivarious. This is just to show you overall causes of AK. You can see if you see the bottom number 5, acute tubular necrosis, most important thing, second line is nephrotoxins. The sixth one, acute interstitial nephritis, drugs. Intratubular obstruction, drugs caused. See, everywhere the drugs cause major problems in causing acute kidney injury. These are the more important things. This is highlighting that. So if you see a break of acute kidney injury, see about almost 40 to 50% is acute tubular necrosis. As I told you, some may be acute interstitial nephritis, some may be due to tubular obstruction. You can see on the left, a small portion is due to vascular occlusion. So these are the various headings under which we will be seeing what are the various manifestations and causations of toxic nephropathy. When we think of toxic causes, first you should think of toxins from outside. And when we are in Salem, and people, all the colleagues of me there on the other side of the Zoom, they will know Government Mohan Kumar Medical College, the biggest causes, the largest cause of acute kidney injury in nephrology ward when we were working, Dr. Ramasamy was working with me, was snake bite. Huge load of snake envenomation, viper bite, because of the lot of snake bites were there from Namakkal. We used to get a lot of cases. So that can cause envenomation due to its most of the enzymes and the cytokines can cause acute. In addition, wasp sting, antibite toxin, formic acid, bee sting can cause acute renal failure. Inside the body, myocardium, following any muscle injury, or if you are given a blood transfusion which was mismatched, or some contrast dyes due to coronary angiography and drugs. That's what we are going to see. So we'll slowly see one by one. Snake envenomation, as already told you, plethora of cases. We had hundreds of cases. We are in the India largest series of snake bite induced AKS from Salem Center. Okay. One of the commonest causes we see. And the toxins I already told you, the snake venom has hemorrhages causing hemorrhage, proteolytic enzymes causing tissue destruction, hyaluronidase to spread the vaccine, bradykinin, which is a cardiotoxicity, and several others. So they cause direct tubular injury. In addition to this, they can directly be toxic to the renal. Tubules cause acute tubular necrosis. This is just to show you the viper snake, which is the commonest cause which was seen in Salem. This is another cause of acute renal failure, wasp sting, the giant Asian hornet. We have seen a couple of cases of wasp-induced AKI. This is one such case. This is we see a couple of brothers went to the forest, had a cocktail and became this, fell down the forest. One man was bitten by big ants there. Next day, the relatives found and brought he was an acute renal failure because of ant bite poisoning. We had to dialyze him 8 times before he could recover from because of the formic acid toxicity. Again, we had another couple of people who had bee sting. Thousands of bees chased him and bitten, and the whole thing, he developed shock and he developed acute renal failure. He again required a lot of dialysis before coming out. So, ant bite, bee sting, several things can cause. This is a very interesting case. So, those are the snake bite and the wasp sting, bee sting are from external injuries, which are releasing enzymes or formic acid, some cytokines, toxic substance which can cause injury. Sometimes the body releases some toxic substance. This picture you are seeing is one of the patients we treated at Vim's Hospital a couple of years ago. This is a psychiatric patient who was in Airwadi, was very violent. So the treatment people tied him in chains and beat him. About 1-2 weeks they beat him, and he was brought in a very semi-conscious state to Vim's Hospital, and we diagnosed he had a severe acute kidney injury, and the diagnosis was clinical diagnosis confirmed as myoglobinuric AR, because severe muscle injury can cause myoglobin can get released and be toxic to the renal tubules. So that was a case of muscle injury. This is called rhabdomyolysis. Commonly comes due to muscle injury, seizures, violent exercises, sometimes even violent exercise. One of the, if I remember right, one lady student in Vinayaka Medical College, this happened about 10 years ago, passed in the second MBBS. She was so happy, she ran up and down the staircase in their house for 10 times. She developed a severe anterior thigh pain, and the next day she passed a dark red color urine. She came to me, she had acute renal failure due to rhabdomyolysis because of the unaccustomed exertion of the muscles. So we had to dialyze her twice and before she recovered. So sudden violent excesses can damage the kidneys. Even alcoholism again can cause muscle damage. And you should remember one of the very important external toxic rhabdomyolysis, statins. Now cholesterol is very high and most of the medical practitioners taking prophylactic statins, and many times we develop some pain, muscle pain. So that is because of the statins causing muscle damage, because interfering with the coenzyme Q. So that causes the ATP production becomes less, and you cause muscle injury, you got acute renal failure. So when you have statins also, you have to watch out, monitor your renal function levels too. This is how it happens. Pigment nephropathy is suddenly can cause acute decline in renal function. It could be myoglobin in muscle injury, sometimes hemoglobin in mismatched blood transfusion. Those are very common, important causes. See how it happens. You should know the basic pathology. I'm making it very brief. So when you have a injury in the muscles, you can see there is a fluid shift. So leaks. So fluid shifts out of the vascular compartment. Renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system is activated. Renal vasoconstriction, renal failure. Myoglobin, if it's too much of myoglobin is released, minimal myoglobin, it will be sent out by the kidney, efficiently filtered out and sent. If it is too much to handle, it can precipitate with the Tom Horsfall protein and cause obstruction in the tubules. Number 2, obstruction. Number 3, because in the injury, the ferrous oxide can be converted to ferric oxide, which is an oxidant, reactive species. It can be released, and oxidant injury can cause acute renal failure. These are the various 3 ways: vasoconstriction, obstruction, and oxidant injuries can cause acute renal failure in rhabdomyolysis. So the diagnosis by urine myoglobinuria, detected by spectroscopy, and treatment, everything is conservative. For rhabdomyolysis, you have to release the compartmental pressure, supportive therapy, treat the electrolyte imbalance, and if necessary, dialysis. Now we come to the second part of the AKI, which are due to the drugs as such. Most important thing is remember A, B, C, D. You can see the aminoglycosides, you can see the amphotericin B, C, contrast dye, D, NSAIDs. Nowadays we are talking a lot about amphotericin. These are very, very important causes of acute renal failure. As a practicing medical practitioner, as a PG or aspiring who go higher in the studies, whatever may be your choice of field, you should be aware of this 4 A, B, C, D. And when we think of drug-induced acute kidney injury, you should always find out what conditions exist in this patient which can precipitate acute kidney failure, as advanced age, elderly man, people with diabetes mellitus, people who are dehydrated, are using some diuretics, or people who have some pre-existing renal failure already, or sometimes they are using one aminonucleic acid and one analgesics or some other amphotericin B. The cardiovascular disease causing diffuse perfusion to the kidneys, circulatory failure, shock, sometimes even hepatic. All these things are predisposing factors where you should be very careful when you use a drug which has the potential to cause renal failure. That's what I'm trying to convey to you. If you see this, can you identify anyone who can identify this? Many people cannot, because this is the famous gentamicin molecule. And aminoglycosid toxicity is one of the major problems. We have seen for the past 30 years, I would have seen several cases of aminoglycosid induced acute kidney failure. I would have written scarcely 5 or 6 prescriptions of aminoglycosid in my whole practice of 32 years, because we are so much scared of aminoglycosid. Unless it's indicated, we never use aminoglycosid. We'll just see little details. So amikacin not only punches the kidneys, also punches the ears, ototoxicity. So this is just to show you how the tubules in a aminoglycosid toxin looks. You can see the normal tubules nicely. The tubules are all necrosed in gentamicin or aminoglycosid toxicity. See, on this point, you should understand how aminoglycosid causes acute kidney injury. Only then you will be able to plan your treatment schedule. That is why I'm just putting this. So this is a pathological study. You can see the gentamicin. Gentamicin enters the cytoplasmic membrane, cell membrane, forms a giant endocytic complex, and enters in the cytoplasmic reticulum on the left, lysosomes on the center, and even the Golgi apparatus on the right. When they are there, endoplasmic reticulum, lysosomes, and Golgi, the load is less, nothing bad happens to say. But if this load becomes over, so endoplasmic reticulum overflows, lysosomes overflows, Golgi overflows, they spill into the cytosol. You can see the free spaces coming. Then go and spoil the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell. There they induce impair ATP production, oxidative stress, increase Bax levels, and can cause cell apoptosis, tubular cells die and leaks, urine doesn't come out, back leaks, and patient goes into anuria. This is the mechanism of aminoglycosid induced acute tubular necrosis. So based on this, the Kidney Dialysis Initiative Global Outcome, which is our parent body of the international parent body of the nephrologists, which gives guidelines how to handle specific standards of internal panel, but like a WHO giving the World Health programs, this is an organization which gives us guidelines. They have given a guidelines on aminoglycosid induced renal failure. They said the important thing is avoid in high risk patients, elderly, dehydrated, pre-existing renal failure, or diabetes is there, some other nephrotoxin, avoid. they say you use it only if alternate drug is not available. Sometimes we see some practitioners, moment they say urinary tract infection, amikacin 500 milligram twice daily. Not necessary. If there are lesser nephrotoxic drugs like cephalosporin, macrolates, or some other drugs which is the carbipinums or fluoxetines, they can use that. Third point is very, very important. Avoid overdosing. You saw in the previous slide how the overdoses amikacin, gentamicin only spills into the cytosol. So if we can maintain the dose in the Golgi apparatus, the endoplasmic reticulum and the lysosome, damage may not be very high. So dose must be monitored well. We have seen several times the surgical side surgeons should excuse me. Sometimes the gentamicin will go on twice daily for 3 weeks, because many times the house surgeons write including continuing in the same whole drug is a big list, but the house surgeons write continue the same. I have seen several cases later CST. CST means short form of continuous same treatment. So the what drug was there, when the pages stand over, amikacin dosage, how many days going, it is all missed up. So please try to avoid overdosing. An important point the KDIGO advice is administer the aminoglycoside once daily. Depending upon the renal failure, normal renal function, or little reduced, you can space it. That's what I will say. Adjust dose intervals. You can increase the dose, but once daily administration of amikacin or gentamicin causes less nephrotoxicity. And Western countries, they assess the plasma levels, but here it may not be possible clinically frequently, but perhaps we in the future should throw more opportunities for us to assess the plasma levels of aminoglycosides. And number 2, most important, B. We have finished A, we have come to B, amphotericin B toxicity. Now it is really in the limelight because of mucormycosis, people running around for amphotericin B, and that's why I've shown a lot of problems with the ENT surgeons. That's why I've shown a small ENT surgeon with the amphotericin B ready in his hand. Usually it occurs in 1/3 of the patients, especially as in aminoglycosides, high doses. So what is the resolution? What is the solution is lipid formulations of amphotericin B are less toxic. But the only thing is if the amphotericin, general amphotericin generic costs 50 rupees, the lipid formulation costs 2,500 rupees. That is the cost problem. So that's an amphotericin deoxylate. So when you combine with the cholate, it doesn't bind to the tubules. So amphotericin B becomes safer when you use a lipid formulation. But another alternative, now we have got itraconazole, even caspofungin, and all antifungal drugs are come depending on the sensitivity. Perhaps you can, or if the cost factor is there, you can use the alternate drugs. So amphotericin B, one of the important causes of AK, and we should be very careful and when you use especially high doses, go for lipid formulations. Though expensive, life-saving. Now come to C, contrast-induced AK. Now the coronary angiography are done every day in hundreds, even in Salem. Previously very rare. Intravenous pyelography, of course, gone mostly out of date. Sometimes we nephrology do aortogram to add renal selective angiogram to find out renal artery stenosis, and CT scan with contrast dyes. All this can cause acute kidney injury. Now CT scans are very commonly done, angiography commonly done. So the contrast induced AK is very commonly seen nowadays. How does it contrast? Again, like the rhabdomyolysis vasoconstriction, produces oxidative stress, direct tubular injury. They can cause medullary hypoxia, injury to proximal cells, and result in acute kidney injury. This is the mechanism by which most of the drugs causes acute kidney injury or acute tubular necrosis. What shall we do when you have a contrast has to be done? What should we do? Consider alternative IME. Perhaps a plain ultrasonogram will it be helpful? Whether without IV contrast, can you do a CT scan? If you are necessary to do, give low dose of contrast. How much minimum you can give? Tell the cardiologist minimize the dose so that the acute kidney injury is prevented. Choose a low osmolar, isoosmolar, low osmolar contrast. And preventive nowadays we have tried N-acetylcysteine 600 milligram tablets the previous day, twice daily, and the day of contrast administration once daily. And studies have shown that saline infusion, about 1 ml per kg body weight 1 hour before the contrast study with bicarbonate in between, and following it up with the saline transfusion may definitely help in alleviating the possibility of setting enough contrast-induced AKI. That also you should always keep in mind. Important thing is you should monitor the renal function. Another next important thing we should know is acute interstitial nephropathy. So far what we have been saying is acute tubular necrosis following aminoglycosides, amphotericin B, contrast nephropathy. And this one is acute interstitial nephritis. There are several drugs. You can say any number of drugs. That's why I loaded the drugs in the supermarket cart. Any drug can cause acute interstitial nephritis. You can see furosemide can cause. Come low down on the list, you can see pantoprazole. Pantoprazole can cause. Many of the physicians take it routinely. That can cause acute kidney injury, acute interstitial nephritis. I'm just focusing on rifampicin in this slide. So rifampicin was the anti-tuberculosis drug. It can cause acute interstitial nephritis. I have myself seen here over the past 30 years about 6 to 8 cases of rifampicin acute AIN. Especially, it happens when the use is intermittent. Twice a week they gave. Usually the pulmonologist gives twice a week. Sometimes what patients take for 1 month, stop it for 1 month, again they go to the TB center, they restart. That's called interrupted rifampicin. They are more prone to develop acute renal failure due to acute interstitial nephritis. Continuous also, it can come about 10% of the people it can come because the rifampicin acts with the glomerular tubules, it creates an rifampicin and induce antibodies. So the second dose, when it's delayed and given, they have a violent reaction. It can start off an interstitial nephritis where there is interstitial infiltration with inflammatory cells, lot of eosinophils. The eosinophils spill into the urine, whereas you can see in the urine, specifically centrifuges say eosinophils in the urine. It's a very, very diagnostic of rifampicin-induced AIM, eosinophiluria. The incidence is not very uncommon, so we should have a watch over this rifampicin in tuberculosis patient, even lymph nodes, adenitis, or pulmonary tuberculosis, extrapulmonary tuberculosis. You should watch out the renal function till they settle down. Now, this is how the picture looks. Acute interstitial nephritis is a high picture. I will see one of my patients. So intense interstitial nephritis, you can see here, blue color, interstitial infiltration. Very classical of acute interstitial nephritis due to rifampicin. Eosinophils also is seen in the renal biopsy. What should we do when acute interstitial nephritis is there? This is number 2 in the AKI. Suspect every drug. Somebody has got renal failure, suspect every diagnosis. Already told you, eosinophil in urine. Stop the offending drug. Many times renal failure may progress. Maybe even cephalosporins. Antibiotic, you're giving some antibiotic. The creatinine in the ICU, the patient's creatinine may be slowly going up from 1.2. We are worried. Many times stop the antibiotic, if it doesn't improve. Many times you're given short course of steroids. Really helps in recovering from the acute interstitial nephritis. So it is a accepted treatment, giving steroids for recovery from acute interstitial nephritis. If you are doubtful, patient is not passing urine in spite of 2 weeks of treatment, ideally we do biopsy. Is it acute tubular necrosis? Is it acute interstitial nephritis? Or is it about a rapidly progressed nephritis? Or what? So that will be the final coat of answer. This is again, I just wanted to highlight to you. Most of the PPIs, omeprazole, esomeprazole, rabeprazole, pantoprazole, all proton pump inhibitors have potential to cause both acute renal failure and chronic interstitial disease in the long run. So that is now recently lot of evidence is coming in nephrology papers. So nowadays we have a discussion that routine use of pantoprazole should be avoided. In the intensive care unit, if you use pantoprazole, creatinine goes up, suspect that also. Long-term routine use of 6 months, 1 year may not be very safe. If you really want, whenever necessary, you can take. Doesn't matter. But what alternate do we have? Yes, ranitidine is very safe alternative. In case you are really ICU patient creates little high, you are worried about pantoprazole could be the cause. Use ranitidine as a safer alternative. And finally, the fourth aspect of acute kidney injury said crystals can obstruct the tubules. So AKI could be ATN, acute tubular necrosis. Number 2, acute interstitial nephritis. Number 3, it is due to the crystal obstruction of the tubules. So tumor lysis syndrome, when you have some malignancies or some lymphoma, anti-cancer therapy breaks down the tissues, purine gets broken down, and uric acid released. Mass uric acid floods the kidney. They are not able to be filtered by the urine beyond some extent. So they go on block the tubules. Uric acid nephropathy, uric acid crystals block the tubules. Some acyclovir therapy, sulfonamide crystals, methotrexate, even sometimes ciprofloxacin. And last but not the sodium phosphate. Gastroenterologists will understand for the colonoscopy, they use the sodium phosphate solution to clean the colon before the colonoscopy. That can cause phosphate crystals can go and deposit in the tubules. So all these things you should keep in mind and use remedial measures. Blocks up, for example, tumor lysis syndrome, you can give allopurinol. You can give fluids, you alkalinize it. All those things you should always plan so that it doesn't obstruct the renal tubules. So you can see the methotrexate crystals which can go and block. These are the sulfonamide crystals in urine deposits. This is one of the ciprofloxacin crystals. You can see purple color inside the right side slide. Purple colors are crystals. So all this you should keep in mind. Acute kidney injury due to ATN, AIN, or obstruction or vascular constriction. So how do we diagnose it? Many times the ICU is very difficult to diagnose. Most of the AKI due to toxins happen in intensive care unit and you're very much worried. So what criteria do we have? So that is why with a lot of deliberation, the criteria which is known as the rifle criteria came into practice. So you can see the risk, injury, F, failure, loss, and it's called rifle. I want you to concentrate on the first two things. Let's say increased in creatinine into 1.5 in 6 hours. And urine output less than 0.5 ml per kg per hour in 8 hours. See, this increase is suppose creatinine is 1 the previous day, next day it becomes 1.5, it is a risk. Many times we overlook 1.5, maybe laboratory error, maybe we'll check tomorrow. No. So the creatinine increases from 1 to 1.5. Urine output is 0.5 ml per kg per hour. For say 0.5 ml per hour, you say so 50 kg man will be about 25 ml per hour for 6 hours less than. Think patient is at risk. Same urine output less for 12 hours, no patient is going for injury. But same thing persists for 24 hours. Understand, patient is going for failure. Why this rifle is very important? Because this, if you catch them with the risk or injury, you can bring them out. It goes to failure or loss, then as you know, you will require dialysis. Complete loss of kidney, you require dialysis. So our aim is to catch them early and make them come out of the renal failure. That's why the rifle criteria, RAFLE criteria is very important. Now we use it, and this is very good thing to use in ICU. Find out anybody who is alert. This in fact in Britain they have an alert system. The creatinine 1 becomes 1.5 in the laboratory. Today you send a sample. Tomorrow you send a sample routinely to the laboratory. The previous day creatinine becomes as 1.5. There is an electronic alert system sent to the ICU that this patient is going on a scale risk. Please watch. They send an alert. That much of integrated system is there when you incorporate rifle into the medical care system. Perhaps we can link it by our minds and do the same in India. So this is again another criteria, Akin criteria, nothing much, same thing, 0.5 ml, another nutshell, not complicating. So 1.5 times, 2 times, 3 times, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. That's it. But you see the urine volume and the creatinine were done while the cardiologists were inventing newer markers, and nephrologists were satisfied with creatinine. They woke up very late now. Is there anything else which can tell us about the kidney injury early, even before the creatinine? Because the creatinine, everything is a function. It tells you the function, how the GFR is there, how the kidneys function. Can we find out whether injury is there? Is there something which protein can be identified? Is there any injury is there? That's why we have novel biomarkers. KIM1, kidney injury molecule 1, and IL-6, interleukin 6, interleukin 8. Number 3, cystatin C, NGAL, a lot of more, but these 4 are in the limelight, especially neutrophil gelatinase associated lipokinase, very, very important, as in fact it is found to precede the serum creatinine level much, much earlier, even 48 hours before the creatinine rises. So you should think, understand, and know there is a marker which can find out contrast nephropathy much early before the creatinine rises, which is very, very useful nowadays. This is just to show you. In fact, we had a research going on the Department of Biochemistry at the Vinayaga Medical College with Vim's Hospital. One of the postgraduates, professors, associate professors joined with me and did a research where we analyzed NGAL. Special kits were imported. We analyzed NGAL in about 50 patients who underwent contrast study, angiography in Vim's Hospital, previous high-tech hospital. You can see the coronary angio being done. The creatinine is the purple line. See, it rises about 46 hours later. Cystatin C almost the same. Now you can see in the NGAL, see, as an angio, see 1.5 hours to 2 hours, you can see the NGAL peaking. In fact, we published this comparison of NGAL, cystatin C, early indicator, AK for contrast surgery in the International Journal of Medical Sciences in 2013 from Vinayaga Medical College, Department of Biochemistry. This is only to show you how newer markers are available to find out the rise early before creatinine. So please remember neutrophil gelatinase associated lipocalin, NGAL. Is there anything more? Yes. Now people are coming up with still more molecular diagnosed. People have found out the cell cycle arrest markers, and especially very useful in the toxic nephropathy. You can say glyphosate poisoning, see glyphosate poisoning, AKI, paraquat poisoning, Russell Viper poisoning, oxalic acid toxicity. Each one has got its own characteristics patterns, toxic agent. What agent is there? What severity is there? You can find out. That much advancement has come. You can see no AKI, the green light, green dots, no AKI. And AKI stage 1, stage Akin 2, 3. Here, what poison? So, small sample can give you so many information. Is it patient has got AKI? Is it due to the Viper animation? Or is it due to sepsis? Sepsis and all we won't show. So, it's very, very useful to find out indications that AKI is due to definitely toxins, either external or internal. So now that we are seen what is the profile of diagnosis in AKI, this is what is the real important thing happening. This is a normal kidney. So increased risk, damage, fallen GFR, kidney failure, death. So you can see primary prevention comes from the increased risk. The rightful criteria are, and the risk is that you can prevent it here itself. And the kidney damage is there itself. This is what I told you by the NGAL, the protein markers or the enzyme markers. They can find out structural damage, injuries. This is function, this is structural damage. So secondary prevention, you can prevent it here. Once the GFR falls, only the creatinine rises. So by the time it is late, you want to only treat therapy. Successful, For the kidney failure, they recover. But the prognosis sometimes are guarded. So if you want to give prognosis of the toxic AKI, identify early and respond early. That is the message of today. See, this is again to show you the KDIGO guidelines which lower down to slightly blood. But acute kidney failure is what happens in 1 to 7 days. Subacute kidney failure is 8 to 90 days, 3 months. Beyond 3 months is called chronic. So drug exposure also almost mimics the acute, subacute and chronic. I'll just show you how now you can understand. See, the aminoglycoside causes acute renal failure. So drug exposure within 7 days, aminoglycoside causes acute renal failure. Now look at the subacute. Cisplatin, chemotherapeutic cisplatin causes subacute acute kidney injury. Again, exactly comes from the definition of subacute 8 to 90 days. Look at the lithium. It causes chronic exposure to lithium causes proteinuria, interstitial fibrosis, internal infiltration, and can cause renal failure. So the acute, subacute, chronic renal failure, toxicity also happens in aminoglycoside acute, cisplatin subacute, lithium chronic. They overlap very beautifully systematically. What do we do when you have an acute kidney injury due to toxins, external toxins or drugs? What do we do? First and foremost is assess the risk. Major thing. Patient specific. Is the patient old, elderly? Is he got some other problems, some other renal disease? Number 2, drug specific. Will this drug has got a potential to cause renal damage? Think, assess the risk, then take a decision. Number 2, recognize the renal failure first. Always keep in mind the background rifle criteria. Even the simple measurements of urine output is enough to show you patient is in stage R, is gone into I. That's why many times when the patients are referred from any medical college or some other hospitals to me, I always turn to the intake output chart. I'm sorry, many of the times our staff nurses write the intake output chart the next day morning before handing over the duty only. If you say hourly urine output, if they meticulously measure hourly urine output, many a times you can find out acute kidney injury setting is much earlier. So we have to train them to find urine output, hourly output is so important to fit into the rifle criteria. And number 2 is subtle change. Even the creatinine 1 becomes 1.3. Don't say it's okay. Post-operative, previously it was 1. After surgery, next day one is 1.23. 1.3 only, no, it's okay. No, urine output is adequate, no problem. No, that is important because aminoglycoside toxicity has got good urine output. There won't be any oliguria. So even our urine output is adequate. Subtle changes create. Think anything else is happening. Is it getting any pantoprazole? Stop it. Is it getting analgesic? Did you give some NSAIDs last night? Stop it. So subtle changes have to be recognized. Subtle changes. Number 3, respond immediately. Stop. If you suspect some drug, stop it. Or must be given like an aminoglycoside. Reduce the dose. Don't give full dose. Give half the dose. And think. Suppose septicemia, urosepsis, amikacin is the only drug which is responding. You may have to give. If withholding sepsis may lead to acute renal failure. So consider risk versus benefit. And number 4, renal support. Dialysis many times may be useful to remove toxins. Sometimes toxins like ethyl alcohol, barbiturates, a lot of drugs can be removed. Dialysis may be required for removing for urea creatinine causing sustaining during renal failure so that the tubules recover. So renal support is mandatory. Number 5, rehabilitate. Most of the cases respond well with the withdrawal of the drugs, sometimes steroids. Most of the cases respond and recover normal uniform. They get discharged with a normal kidney function. But a word of caution. Nowadays, the acute kidney injury, even due to snake bite or aminoglycoside induced renal failure, you have to monitor them lifelong, because many of them go into chronic renal failure in after 10 years, 5 years. AKI sometimes proceeds slowly to chronic. So monitor them. And sixth R is do research. You have to do a lot of epidemiological study. You will understand when you follow the couple of slides later. You will understand why epidemiological study some area what causes renal failure. Avoid this drug in these people. These people are prone for this. Avoid this. And sometimes for the research to identify whether it's acute tubular necrosis or acute intestinal nephritis, you have to do a renal biopsy. That part is the major cause of toxin-induced acute kidney injury, which is very, very important because it's life-threatening. We are bothered more about in the intensive care and the medicine ward, in the surgical wards, the obstetrical wards. And a brief word about toxic, which can cause chronic kidney diseases. And the number one, it comes to everyone's mind, is NSAIDs. Very often NSAIDs are prescribed without any thought. Lot of people we have seen the NSAIDs, long-term use for joint pain, back pain, coming on with the renal failure. This is just to show you how the NSAIDs inhibit cyclooxygenase, which indirectly goes and brings down the prostaglandin levels. Prostaglandin you see on the left are very important, the afferent arterial vasodilatation. The prostaglandins are taken off, blocked. Prostaglandin comes down, there is afferent arteriolar constriction. So the normal glomeruli, which is GFR is high, the vessels become small. Here its spasm is there, constricted. So GFR falls and they reduce GFR leading to acute kidney injury. This is how NSAID can cause even acute renal failure. One dose of acute NSAID can cause renal failure or worsen a pre-existing renal failure. One of my patient who had the chronic renal failure of 8 milligram was treated well for years together, was on 3 milligram for 5-10 years. Suddenly one day came with 9 milligram, 10 milligram creatinine requiring dialysis. I said the previous day I went to a dental surgeon who gave me a diclofenac injection. That finished at residual renal function. So be very, very watchful when you give NSAIDs. You have to monitor the renal function. And sometimes the other causes which are causing the chronic CKD may be like acute intestinal, chronic intestinal, cyclosporine, calcineurin inhibitors, chemotherapy, cisplatin, heavy metals like cadmium, lithium as already indicated. Sometimes even not only Indian herbs, herbal medicine, Chinese herbs, they can cause chronic interstitial nephritis. Again, as I showed you something, this you may not be able to identify, but I'll tell you what. In fact, in the Balkan states, which consists of Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, Romania, people are seeing a lot of chronic renal patients. They were taking a lot of Chinese herbal preparation for weight reduction. Then they had a progressive anemia, progressive renal failure. And then found they had been given some packets which were to be mixed in tea and taken. So it's a special tea imported from China. Then they found Aristolochia was mixed in tea. And they were seen mostly in Balkan states. And they found that's called, now nephrology, they have a terminology for Balkan nephropathy. Again, progressive anemia, progressive renal failure due to herbal preparation called, see, this is the Aristolochia, this is the molecular structure with Aristolochia. Sometimes star fruits, lot of toxic herbs, flowers, fruits are there which can cause acute renal failure. So you have to be very careful when you study a geographic population, what cause as a toxic chronic renal disease. Now I just tell you small short interesting case, and then I'll tell you the diagnosis. A 50-year-old lady, a daily worker, who was admitted in Annapurna Medical College 2-3 months ago, developed pedal edema with facial puffness, referred from the Department of Medicine, and Dr. Ramasamy was following it up. He came to me with a massive proteinuria, and then We thought of possibility of membranous nephropathy, which is one of the common nephrotic syndrome causes in adults. And close scrutiny, we received from her son that one of the co-worker in this lady bought some indigenous medicines in the market in the junction area, gave us drugs for joint pain. It took for 3 weeks. And then we thought we should go and check, ask her to bring the capsules. And we brought the capsule and sent it to the chemical laboratory, and it contained mercury. So it was a real eye-opener for us. We did a renal biopsy at Annapurna Medical College. Dr. Senthilnathan, ultrasound guided, that did a renal biopsy. Mercury was detected in the drugs as well as in the serum. We sent to the laboratory. See, this is the light microscopy. You can see the membranous nephropathy caused by heavy metal mercury, which is part and parcel of most of the indigenous drugs. So you should be aware of these type of toxic nephropathy. Questioning the patient, find out what drugs they have. See, this is a beautiful immunofluorescence microscope, the same patient showing thick membranes due to the mercury toxic. We are planning to evaluate further and publish it in the journal shortly. This is membranous nephropathy due to mercury toxicity. Now, having finished the toxic nephropathy of acute renal failure, acute kidney injury, vascular occlusion, acute interstitial nephritis, and crystal problems, chronic interstitial nephritis, nephrotic syndrome, chronic renal failure. Finally, let us summarize what has happened recently. The diagnosis of AKI is clinical, measuring urine output, functional, measuring creatinine, cellular, molecular, or structural. Let us focus. See, urine output is measured regularly. It is a clinical monitor. Functional monitor, serum creatinine. Cellular monitor, recently I told you the study, NGAL. Molecular, urinary microRNAs. Structural, renal biopsy. Categorizes. Is it acute tubular necrosis? It is chronic interstitial nephritis. Acute interstitial nephritis. Is it eosinophilic cause? Is it crystals? Everything can be done in renal biopsy. Good news for early diagnosis. Now we have got a small instrument like a glucometer. It's called a NephroCheck, which is available abroad. I have seen it in conferences abroad. It is known as a NephroCheck. And it checks in the 1 drop of urine tissue inhibitor metalloproteinase 2, TIMP2, and insulin-like growth factor binding protein 7, IGFBP7. 1 drop of urine chip, it detects, it shows patient is going for acute kidney injury. Very, very efficient, very early marker. So this is revolutionized the treatment of identification of acute kidney injury in the ICU and elsewhere. So that these are called molecular markers. These are cell cycle arrest markers. Very, very early diagnosis, very efficient. So soon it will come to India. Perhaps we'll have fingertips whether the patient is acute renal failure going in or not, and plan treatment accordingly. Before closing, I'll again like to highlight you, just because the patient recovered from an acute kidney injury, do not relax. See, look at the red line. Full, some people recover fully. Some people go over time, acute on chronic kidney disease, slowly. See, some people see acute CRD. Some people, green line shows full recovery. So full recovery, CKD slowly, in between AKCD, rapidly to CKD is 8%. So most of the people have recovered. But these type of people you should follow. The red line and the dark green line you should follow over the time. This is a current concept that all AKIs are not AKI. It could be chronic element in that also. That we have to keep in mind. Finally, summarizing, always take care in the clinical context, in the spite of now the clinical scenario, how patients respond to you, how the patient status is not informed to them, how problems we face in our medical practice in the ICU, post-surgery. take care to speak to the patient or relatives, explain to them what is the situation, what drug we are giving. It can cause this, it may improve. And many times I search the files of the patient. When somebody comes to me with creatinine 4 milligram, no diabetes, no hypertension, no urinary infection, ultrasound is normal, everything is normal. I search the file, everything. They say nothing will not taken. Search the file and say there will be a prescription which is given NSAIDs for a long time. Ibuprofen, Ketorol, Ketonac, all these things. So search the file to find is there something else which is patient has taken. And mind you, please suspect every drug. Every drug. Pantoprazole, suspect. Furosemide, suspect. NSAID, suspect. Cephalosporin, suspect. So suspect every drug and stop if you feel that is the offender. And monitor the renal function seriously. As I already told you, remember the R concept. Risk. Think of the risk in this patient and what drug. Recognize the renal failure early. Respond quickly. Give renal support early. Rehabilitate them and follow them early. Good research will throw more light. Still not happy, we can refer it to nephrologist. So to tackling nephropathy is not a single man's job, it's not a nephrologist job, it's a physician, the staff nurse who measures the urine output, the laboratory technician gives you assessment, advanced in the biochemistry data which can come in, the pathology which can give you a biopsy report, the drug list which can be there, also these are the drugs which can be given, and the overall assessment done by the intensivists round the clock about the urine output. So it is a big team effort. Let us all join hands, heads and heart together to reduce and prevent toxic nephropathy. Thank you for the wonderful opportunity. Thank you for giving time to express on an important topic of toxic nephropathy. Nice to be speak to you on Zoom, the whole audience of people in and around Annapurna Medical College. Thank you so much. I'll be very happy to answer any questions if you have anything. Thank you. Thank you, Ramasamy, Dr. Shanmugam, Dr. Mohan, Rusha.
No questions, sir.
Stop sharing.
Thank you very much for your wonderful eye opener for toxic nephropathy, sir, to prevent kidney diseases. Thank you very much, sir. Just now I heard that Balkans nephropathy is a new entity. I heard just now, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your wonderful eye opener lecture, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ask Dr. Senthilnathan for a vote of thanks.
Okay.
Senthilnathan.
There are no questions. Everything is clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. 1 minute, sir. Senthilnathan.
Senthil is coming on.
Good afternoon to one and all.
Oh.
All beautiful events is gratitude, and that it means. It was an immense pleasure for myself and Department of Medicine to express our heartfelt thanks to our speaker, Professor Dr. Jones Pranal sir, for enlightening us upon the topic toxic nephropathy and the valuable information you shared us and making this webinar an interesting and meaningful, sir. I also extend my gratitude to our team, Medical Superintendent, Vice Principal, DMS sir, for the constant motivation and guidance they have provided us to make our vision come true at all times. I must mention my profound sense of appreciation and thanks to all my colleagues of Department of Medicine, guided by our HOD, for the minute-to-minute support and hard work they have done to make this webinar a successful one. I am thankful to all the staff members, teaching and non-teaching faculties of all other departments, junior resident, CRI, for their participation and cooperation on the webinar virtually. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Senthilnathan, for the nice words.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ramasamy.